With the two biggest parts of the NFL offseason behind the Tennessee Titans, I think Calvin Ridley was the best addition they made. I'll explain why on today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast.
You are Locked On Titans, your daily Tennessee Titans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Titans podcast. I am your host, Tyler Rowland. Titans fans, today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. The Tennessee Titans have gone through the main part of free agency. They've gone through the NFL draft. Now it is time to look at the best moves that they made, the worst moves that they made, and the most underrated moves as well. I'm going to look at free agency and the draft and give you my take on each of those categories. Before we dive into it, though, I do want to thank you for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first listen each and every day. Remember, Monday through Friday, Tennessee Titans content all year round, always for free. You're not going to beat that anywhere else. Make sure you get subscribed, stay subscribed to the number one Tennessee Titans podcast in the world. Shout out to my everydayers out there tuning in Monday through Friday. On tomorrow's show, I'm going to get to some of your guys' mailbag questions. Then we're going to hear from Brian Callahan and Will Levis and some people on Thursday. I'll have a breakdown of that on Thursday night. Over the weekend, we have rookie minicamp for the Titans, and then the NFL schedule drops next week. So much content coming your way. Again, make sure you stick with me here on the Locked On Titans podcast. But with that being said, I said it at the beginning of the show, my number one addition for the Tennessee Titans this offseason was Calvin Ridley. I think that Ridley is such a perfect fit. Now, I'm breaking this up into free agency and draft. So I'll tell you my best addition in free agency, obviously, is Calvin Ridley. So with Brian Callahan's offense that we've seen him have in Cincinnati, it's such a heavy wide receiver-based offense. 3 wide receiver looks, always in 11 personnel out on the field. And the Titans simply did not have any speed at wide receiver. No separators whatsoever. Hopkins, great player, but always been contested catch guy, physical player, didn't really create a ton of separation. He just has great body control and great hands, and again, great in contested catch situations, so he's able to make plays. But you look outside of that, Burks isn't a separator. He's a big physical guy. NWI had some of the worst separation numbers in the entire NFL. Like, the Titans wide receiver group was probably the worst separating group in the entire NFL, devoid of speed, devoid of quickness. So to add a guy like Calvin Ridley, it's not just that you got a really good wide receiver, okay, just in general, but it's the way that he plays and how it fits within what the Titans needed from their wide receiver group. Calvin Ridley is one of the best route runners in the NFL. Calvin Ridley has excellent speed and quickness. Calvin Ridley is a separator. So not only is he a good player in himself, but he is a perfect pairing with what the Titans already had on the roster, or for, to explain it better, what they didn't have on their roster. So Calvin Ridley just solves such a major issue with this offense, and his ability to get open quickly is going to be absolutely paramount for Will Levis to have somebody to throw to right away and not always just have to chuck it up and hope. You know what I mean? With DeAndre Hopkins, there's a bit of, hey, chuck it up and hope that Hopkins comes down with it. With Ridley, it's going to be, he is open. I am throwing him the ball right now because he is open. Like, no question about it. So, excuse me. And especially when you look at the lack of moves that the Titans made outside of that at wide receiver. I mean, obviously, they're visiting with Zay Jones. They visited with Tyler Boyd. We talked about that situation yesterday. But right now, as things stand, you just have Hopkins still there. That's good. They brought back NWI, Burks, Phillips. Big question marks at the end of the day. And then you bring in Jaquan Jackson in the draft. And, there's high hopes he can be a contributor from day one on special teams. But I'm not looking at Jaquan as somebody who's going to make some major impact on offense right away as a 6th-round pick. You know what I mean? So with the lack of other moves that the Titans have made at wide receiver to this point, and then what Calvin Ridley provides to the group, absolutely my favorite addition of the entire offseason. Certainly my top addition in free agency. Even with the price, and not only that, all of that, what he means to the Titans, and then stealing him away from Jacksonville and the way that went down. Just absolutely my favorite move they've made so far this offseason. I know that some people are going to say L'Jarius Sneed, and that's fine. I will not argue with you on that one, but let me know down below who your favorite best free agent addition has been so far. And of course, Sneed was a trade, but we'll count that in the free agency bucket because at the end of the day, it was basically a free agency transaction. But for the draft, not a lot of options in my opinion, so I'm going to go with J.C. Latham. At the end of the day, the Tennessee Titans had to get an offensive tackle. They needed to grab 2 starting offensive tackles, in my opinion. They only got 1 so far during this process, but the one that they got, Latham, has high-end potential. Obviously, I really like Joe Alt. I would have been happy for the Titans to get Joe Alt, but you're not being honest if you don't admit that J.C. Latham has higher-end upside than Joe Alt. Joe Alt is I've explained this before, he's the plug-and-play, reliable, consistent guy, the Jake Matthews, the Taylor Lewan, the Colton Miller, the Nate Solder I've seen people compare him to because of the height. He's that kind of consistent, play for 8 years, never have to worry about it. He's not dominant or anything, but he just does a good job consistently for you. J.C. Latham, on the other hand, has Laramie Tunsil, Trent Williams, Tyron Smith type potential. You know, he's already cut some weight, so he's going to play quicker and more mobile with that kind of raw power and the strength in his hands and the coaching from Bill Callahan. Like, I think with missing a 3rd-round pick, and my obvious thoughts on the 2nd-round pick, we'll get into that in a second, but I just think that J.C. Latham is clearly far and away the best pick that the Titans made in the draft. The combination of the need that they had and the potential that he has together just fit. And with the way the board fell, to me, I wanted Neighbors. Those were my 2 top realistic options because I knew that Marvin Harrison Jr. was never going to be close, and he wasn't close. And I tried to tell everybody that for months and months and months, and people wanted to play these dumb games where we act like Marvin Harrison Jr. was a possibility. He was never a possibility. So for me, realistic, Alt and Neighbors were my top 2 for sure. I would have been fine with taking Odunze. I think we could look back here and be like, man, Rome Odunze's a weapon. But at the end of the day, with the needs that the Titans had, with the potential that J.C. Latham has, having Bill Callahan on the staff, I think it's pretty obvious that the best move the Titans made in the draft was to get J.C. Latham. So Calvin Ridley is my favorite move of the entire offseason. Definitely my favorite free agency addition. And then J.C. Latham was my best addition in the draft. Let me know your guys' best down below. Play along with me here. Let me know on Twitter at TicTacTitans how you feel about your picks. But with that being said, we got to talk about my worst additions in free agency in the draft. Today's episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp is great. All right, because sometimes we all need the opportunity to get something off our chest, big or small. Certain things can really start to get to you, and it's important to let that out, especially to someone who's unbiased on your life. So today, I want to say how I really feel about something, and you might even be thinking about the same thing this week. The Titans need to sign a safety, and it is giving me some concern. All right, they need to get that done quickly. But here's the thing. There are bigger problems in everybody's life than their favorite sports team. And that's why it's important that therapy can be different for everyone, because everybody needs to get whatever it is off their chest every once in a while. So if you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be flexible. It's suited to your schedule. Make sure that you visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Titans fans, let's continue today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. We talked about my best additions so far this offseason in free agency, in the draft as well. We're going to keep that going, and I'm going to talk about my worst additions the Titans made in free agency and the draft. And at the end of the show, I'll go over my most underrated additions in both as well. Before we continue, though, I do want to thank you for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first listen each and every day. Remember, tomorrow I'm answering your mailbag questions. Unless we get like a big signing with one of these wide receivers or something, of course, I'll have to pivot. But Thursday, we're going to hear from Brian Callahan, Will Levis, some assistant coaches. I'm going to be bringing you guys a recap of everything they had to say over the weekend, rookie minicamp. Next week, the schedule gets released. We got a lot to discuss here on the show. Make sure you get subscribed, stay subscribed to the #1 Tennessee Titans podcast in the world. But with that being said, there were some questionable additions, in my opinion. Absolutely. The Titans made a lot of good moves this offseason. I'm very happy with a lot of the things that they've done. But there are clearly some things that I'm not as big of a fan of. We'll start with free agency. The addition of Kenneth Murray. Look, I know we have talked about the fit, how Kenneth Murray fits in the Tennessee Titans defense, why they would have gone out and prioritized Kenneth Murray over other options. We've discussed it. The reality is his skill set fits with a blitzing downhill defense. If the Titans plan to blitz from all over the field, if they want to bring their linebackers up the gut, they want to bring cornerbacks and slots off the sides, they want to bring safeties up the middle, coming into the box and coming downhill, they want to do twists and stunts and utilize not only their defensive linemen in those twists and stunts, but utilize their linebackers and their defensive backs in those twists and stunts to really confuse offenses, to really muck up the line of scrimmage, to confuse blocking assignments with the offensive line. If the Titans want to do all those things, then I get why they went out and got Kenneth Murray. All right, Kenneth Murray is a downhill player with great size, 6'3", over 200 pounds, probably close to 230. And he likes to go downhill. He's going to be a good blitzer. He's going to come downhill and be your take-on linebacker to take on lead blockers in the hole and smack people and just use his body. He's going to be a downhill force for the Titans. That's absolutely the case. But Kenneth Murray has been an utter disappointment since he's been drafted. He's terrible in coverage. He has no coverage awareness whatsoever. Like, he just doesn't understand where to drop, doesn't understand how routes progress. He's a guy who can overdiagnose and overread his keys. He doesn't have a great understanding of what he's seeing. His eyes lie to him all the time. He'll overrun things. He'll pursue the wrong things. He gets fooled by misdirection, play action fakes. He's just all over the place, man. Absolutely all over the place. Kind of like James Williams, Titans draft pick. I would say that's similar, but one's a first-round pick, one's a seventh-round pick, so it's definitely different. But, like, while the skill set of Kenneth Murray does in theory fit with our theory of what the Titans are going to be doing on defense, and a lot of it is, you know, we're seeing the players that the Titans are adding and using that as a way to surmise what they could plan to do on defense. And I'll be honest with you, if they don't plan to use Kenneth Murray in the way that I just described, then it would be even more of a disaster than what it is right now. You know what I mean? And I wouldn't necessarily call it a disaster. I would say it's questionable. It's the most questionable free agent decision that they've made. By far my least favorite free agency addition that they've made. I mean, I like the addition of bringing back NWI more than I like the addition of Kenneth Murray based on the other linebackers that were out there, which we've talked about during the free agency preview series here on the show. All of the linebackers that were available to the Titans that they could have taken a chance on. And instead, they brought in Kenneth Murray. So it better be because he fits. And the way that he would fit is in the way that I just described. Downhill, blitzer, take on backer, all of that stuff. Let him go downhill, because when he goes backwards and when he has to think too much about what to do and key and diagnose what the play is, he's lost, man. He's just absolutely lost. So maybe the Titans find a way to get the best out of Kenneth Murray and putting him in a situation that fits his skill set and allows him to not think as much and just go out and play like we've heard from Denard Wilson so far. If the Titans do that, then maybe the Kenneth Murray deal can work out. But I got to tell you, I'm just not a big fan of the signing. Wasn't a big fan of the signing when it happened. And it's a big leap of faith in Denard Wilson to have Kenneth Murray be your only true linebacker addition in free agency. Like, you're playing with fire there. You absolutely are. To the draft. I feel bad because, I hammered this point home on my show, on other shows, on socials. I've hammered this point home, but I'm not going to get on here and lie either, just because people get mad about my opinion. One thing I'll tell you as a listener of this show, I'm never going to falsify my opinions to serve the crowd. I'm never going to be a people pleaser. Hey, I know that people will be mad if I say my opinion, so I'm not going to say my opinion. That's not how I work. That requires and will result in getting a lot of hate for some of the opinions that I have sometimes, and that's just the reality of it. But at the end of the day, be yourself, say what you truly feel, speak your mind, and live with the results. And I don't like the Sweat pick. I don't like it. I think they overdrafted him. I'm not a big fan of how he projects into an NFL defense because of the weight concerns, the conditioning concerns, which is crazy. I had people like, where are their conditioning concerns? I didn't see any of that. And then I dropped 6 scouting reports from the top scouting sites that are available to the public that all mention his weight and his conditioning as concerns. Like, if you're going to tell me that you're not worried about that, then that's fine. But don't act like those aren't obvious concerns. It's the number one concern with Sweat is his conditioning, his off-field commitment to football, his ability to play a ton of snaps at the NFL level. And you can talk about how he had the most snaps at Texas and blah, 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 blah. Okay, great. 35 snaps a game isn't going to make him worth the 38th pick in the NFL. So that may be the most snaps at Texas, but he's not going to play at Texas anymore. This is the NFL. Jeffrey Simmons is out here playing 75, 80% of snaps. He's got to be on that level if he wants to be worth the 38th pick. So, to me, again, I am not convinced that Sweat is going to have the pass rush upside that some people think that he will. Therefore, I am concerned that he is an early down, 2-down run stuffing nose tackle, and he doesn't really hit the knee on the ground when taking on double teams. In his pass rush, because people like to clip my show and take me out of context to try to make me look bad online. Punch up, keep punching up. But he doesn't play with enough power in his pass rush. He likes to hand fight instead of bull rush. I showed it all in my film breakdown on Tic Tac Titans. Got a lot of views on that. Thank you guys for checking it out. But yeah, I'm not going to back down off this point anytime soon. I'm going to have to be proved wrong. I'm not just going to switch my opinion on Sweat, which I had before the draft, just to, bow down to the Titans fan mob. Like, no, I'm going to hold strong with my opinion and what I saw on tape and what my concerns are until he proves me wrong on the field. So obviously my least favorite draft pick was T'Vondre Sweat, but you all knew that anyways. But now we got to talk about the most underrated, the one people aren't talking about enough. Very excited to dive into that with you guys. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Look, Game Time is the best place to buy tickets. I buy all my tickets on Game Time, whether it be football, basketball, baseball, concerts, theater, anything that you want. They're going to have it on Game Time, and Game Time has the best features. All right, number one, you get the Game Time guarantee. If you find a better seat or a better price in the same row and same section, they're going to credit you 110% of the difference. But also, you get all-in pricing. So you actually know what you're going to pay for your tickets when you go to check out. Not only that, but they have like a panoramic view from your seat, so you know what you're going to be looking at when you sit down. Where do you get all of that in a ticket buying app? Only at Game Time. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, Create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Titans fans, let's cap off today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. We talked about the best free agent and draft addition the Titans made, the worst free agent and draft addition the Titans made. You could call that my favorite and my least favorite too. It is just my opinion at the end of the day. But let me know your opinion down below in the comments. Tag me on Twitter at TicTacTitans. Do want to remind you folks watching on YouTube that if you're ever on the go and you can't watch the show, check out Locked On Titans on a podcast app. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Podcasts, whatever, all the different podcast platforms that are out there. Check out the show on the audio version as well if you're ever on the go. Wanted to remind you there. But also, want to let you know that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. It's here on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. It's called Locked On Sports Today. Locked On Sports Today is here for you again, 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day. You get local experts from all the Locked On shows. You get coverage of every league from our national shows. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV channels app. But my most underrated additions for the Titans this offseason, in free agency, it's Lloyd Cushenberry. Cushenberry has been pushed under the rug at this point. All the talk about Calvin Ridley, then you get the L'Jarius Sneed move, and then we move right on to the draft, and all the conversation is about J.C. Latham, and all the conversation is about T'Vondre Sweat, and there's even a ton of conversation about Cedric Gray, the Titans' fourth-round pick inside linebacker. But Lloyd Cushenberry and his impact on this team and what he can be for this team and how important it is to have somebody in the pivot. Look at that inside football guy calling the center spot the pivot, baby. I'm a big-time 100 IQ guy. You know what I'm saying? All jokes aside, look, having Lloyd Cushenberry at center is huge for this team. The center is the nervous system, the brain of the offensive line. Speaking with both sides, getting guys lined up, pointing out blocking assignments. Like, it's critical that Lloyd Cushenberry was signed. I was so excited by that move when it first happened, and it feels like so long ago now that happened. That was like the Titans' big first move. And because of that, it's kind of gone underrated and under the radar a little bit. But adding Cushenberry is just as important as adding J.C. Latham. Like, the Titans could not roll with Aaron Brewer again. The Titans had to make a major addition at center, and we've heard from Lloyd Cushenberry, and he's talked about how Bill Callahan being here and how he knows that Bill Callahan can take his game to the next level. So we're getting Lloyd Cushenberry, the player that he's been the last few years, is worth the money that the Titans paid. If we get a better version of Lloyd Cushenberry than what we just saw the last few years, I mean, that would be one of the best centers in the entire NFL. It would be huge. So not only did the Titans make additions, at tackle, but adding Lloyd Cushenberry in the middle of it all is just completely gone under the radar. Is completely underrated at this point. He may end up being the best offseason addition that they made. Now, I'm hoping that is not the case, that there are other players that step up and make a bigger impact, like Ridley, like Sneed, like Latham. Of course, that's what you have to hope for. But I just think Lloyd Cushenberry is such a rock-solid addition, such a smart move, such a safe move that it just doesn't get as much love in his pub as it should at this point in the offseason. As for the most underrated in the draft, I could have gone with Cedric Gray here, but he's getting a ton of pop at this point because he's expected to come in right away. I think Jarvis Brownlee Jr. ends up being the most underrated move of the entire draft. I know that he's coming in without a defined role as a starter right away. Like, you're going to have Cheeto and Sneed on the outside and McCreary on the inside. But I think that there is a chance that Jarvis Brownlee Jr. could like be a long-term fantastic player for the Titans. Like if there's somebody in the draft class who has like, obviously with Latham and Sweat, there's a ton of potential there. There's all pro potential there. But if I had to pick a player outside of those two from the Titans draft class who turns into like a superstar player, it would be Jarvis Brownlee Jr. All right, look, he doesn't have the fantastic deep speed. He's a smaller guy at 5'10". I understand the limitations here, but the feistiness, the fearlessness, the dedication to football, like he's just a guy who, like L'Jarius Sneed, like I could see us waking up in a couple of years and Jarvis Brownlee Jr. is one of the best cornerbacks in the entire NFL. Like I could absolutely see that with just his temperament, his play style. And you have to remember, L'Jarius Sneed was drafted at 138 overall. The Titans took Jarvis Brownlee at 146. So 8 picks apart. So it's not ridiculous to think that the Titans could have just drafted the next L'Jarius Sneed. Like, I think that's absolutely a possibility. Is it likely? No, of course not. It's never likely for a 4th-round pick to be an all-pro. It's never likely. But I just think and injuries are going to happen. There are going to be times where Brownlee has to go in. He could play in the slot. He could play outside. I just think that we're going to look back after this season and look back after a couple of years and be like, wow, that Jarvis Brownlee Jr. pick was way bigger than people thought. To me, just like the Roger McCreary pick. You know, Roger McCreary got taken in the 2nd round. And I remember being like, why did they just take a cornerback? What are we doing? And now Roger McCreary is one of the only 4 players in the NFL last year to not give up a touchdown and is one of the best nickel cornerbacks in the entire NFL. So I'm just saying, I think the Jarvis Brownlee Jr. move has gone a little underrated at this point with all the conversation about the top 3 guys. But my best free agency, Calvin Ridley. Draft, J.C. Latham. My worst free agency, Kenneth Murray. Draft, T'Vondre Sweat. My most underrated free agency, Lloyd Cushenberry. Draft, Jarvis Brownlee. Let me know down below how you guys feel about all of these categories. Let me know if you agree or disagree with my selections. But that is going to do it for me today, folks. As always, I am your host, Tyler Rowland, and this was Locked On Titans.